So pleased to introduce Anthea M. Hartig, who was herself a history undergraduate and who is now the Elizabeth Macmillan Director of the National Museum of American History, which is part of the Smithsonian Institute. She is an award-winning public historian and cultural heritage expert. She has a BA from UCLA, as well as 2 graduate degrees from UC Riverside. She is not only a native of Southern California, as am I, but she's a 3rd-generation native. Before going to the Smithsonian, she held a number of heritage positions in California. Currently, she, in addition to her position at the National Museum of American History, is the president-elect of the Organization of American Historians, which is the leading organization of US history in the world. And more locally, she is a member of our own Luskin Center for History and Policy board. So please join me in welcoming Anthea Hartig to our celebration.
Good morning and buenos dias, my incredible graduates. Thank you so much, Chair Pestana, and let me also acknowledge Vice Chair Yarush, Professors Terranciano and Goldman, distinguished faculty and staff of the department who, as we know, hold up the sky. But very especially, let me acknowledge you, my fellow historians, class of 2022, on your day. Go Bruins. Adding to Dr. Pestana's words, let us think of our homelands and acknowledge the layered complexities of our history as we give thanks to the first peoples on whose lands we're honored to live, love, struggle, and work. I also give thanks to all those who've come before me and all who ride along with me on life's journey, on whose grace, generosity, and goodness I thrive, and to whom I'm indebted, like my mother, who joined me today as my very special guest. And to the parents, the families, the partners, the aunties, the uncles, the caregivers who are here, congratulations, and thank you for the support and care you've given our graduates. Let us also pause as we begin our time together and acknowledge this moment of cascading and intersecting crises: viral, racial, gender, economic, climatic, political, constitutional, and especially these last few weeks, that of wanton and horrific gun violence. Let us continue to hold close the millions of families who've lost loved ones due to COVID-19, police brutality, racist violence, and massacres. And let us acknowledge our collective and our individual grief, our loss, our fears, but also let us acknowledge the hope and resiliency and devotion to each other in the inextricable bonds that unite us, and commit to the work that lies ahead of us. I am so deeply honored to be back on campus, to be with you all in person in our dimensions. And I commend your courage, your spirit of inquiry, and your determination. Knowing that over half of you graduates arrived as transfer students and thus completed your degrees in one of the worst global pandemics on record infuses me with even more respect. When I was in your sandals or pumps or Pumas, in 1986, in my rented black robe sweltering in the June heat, having benefited from this remarkable history department with scholars like Gary Nash and Joyce Appleby, Norris Hundley, Alex Sackton, Joan and Scott Waugh, to think that I would return to this graduation would have filled me with bewilderment and humility. It surely fills me with joy in reflecting on the tools, the skills, the empathy, the knowledge that I, like you, learned here. As the 7th Bruin to graduate in my dad's family, I am true blue, and I am so honored to be your commencement speaker. UCLA, I know, right? When it was just 4 buildings, my grandmother was here, and before her, my great aunt, when it was a normal school, a teaching school on Vermont Avenue. UCLA afforded me a layered history education with art and architectural history offerings, along with sociology, anthropology, geography, and instilled further my then nascent understanding of the complexities and the layers of the past, physically and psychically. Here, I also learned better the important power of mentorship, to receive gratefully, seek willfully, and then symbiotically to give freely and widely. I urge you to do the same. And whether you pursue graduate degrees or go forth into the workforce, you now possess ways of seeing the past that will shape your futures. Be open to them. As historians, we are tellers of stories, seekers of truths, embracers of nuance, ambassadors of empathy, and defenders of unalienable rights. That history is a prime tool for social justice and personal growth only continues to grow more resolute in my mind. History for me is the key that unlocks the mysteries of humanity, of meaning, of place, of conquest, of love, of power, and of self. I reflect with deep gratitude on my learning path as an historian, as I've come to understand the importance of conserving and sharing its very materiality as a useful tool to create a more just, informed, and compassionate future. To understand our roles as historians, I often return to Michel Rolfe-Truillot's Silencing the Past, Power in the Production of History from 1995, that slender, powerful volume on the Haitian Revolution, for passages like this. Human beings participate in history both as actors and as narrators. The inherent ambivalence of the word history in many modern languages, including English, suggests this dual participation. In vernacular use, history means both the facts of the matter and a narrative of those facts, both what happened and that which is said to have happened. The first meaning places the emphasis on the socio-historical process, the second on our knowledge of that process or on a story about that process. So if we think then about our dual roles, both as active participants in history and telling the stories about history, we can situate ourselves in 2 important realms of being. The first is of action. I urge you to better understand, know the histories of your community, your nation, your heritage, to understand the dramatic changes over time. Start by thinking about the land, as place first allows us to understand the complex layers and weave of human encounters, and as our Native colleagues have always known, also to understand the sacredness of the land. COVID probably prevented many of you from doing much archival research in repositories, shifting, of course, to online research, but I urge you to do so as you can, to help preserve and moreover expand archiving. And you're so fortunate here that UCLA hopes perhaps one of the most powerful examples of how archival advocacy, prying open the archives and records with and for communities, can reveal new understandings, of course, with the $1 Million Hood Project and the great team led by Professor Kelly Hernandez. Secondly, embrace your role as a storyteller, as a narrator. We shape perceptions about the past values by the way we tell stories, how we tell them, who we include, who we exclude, and what we emphasize. Woo! It's okay, I don't need that one. Rebecca Solnit, in her 2013 The Faraway Nearby, opens with, "What's your story? It's all in the telling. Stories are compasses and architecture. We navigate by them. We build our sanctuaries and our prisons out of them. To be without a story is to be lost in the vastness of a world that spreads in all directions like Arctic tundra or sea ice. Bringing it home, she asserts, we tell ourselves stories in order to live. So to tell this complex, layered, harsh, wonderful set of stories, we have so many tools in our researchers' toolbox, and including among those, of course, the primary sources, historical and cultural resources, those tangible things that reflect this multiple shared narratives. For along with archives, there's everything from historic and prehistoric archaeological sites, Native American village sites, stone walls, barbed wire fences, vineyards, orchards, communities associated with railroads, agriculture, farming, ranching. And then there are the millions of objects and artifacts in museums and historical societies across the nation, all with origin stories and awaiting interpretation and care. Let us strive to use these resources to embrace the remarkable and lasting diversity of the nation and the world. And of course, here in the greater Los Angeles area, our history has always been one of diversity, of mixing it up, of the mestizaje, racial, cultural, ethnic, and social. Work to understand the worst horrors of human interactions and the best of our human capacities. Stand up to small and large injustices with understanding, compassion, and empathy. Unearth histories in which we see ourselves reflected, full histories with all the participants recognized. Call out erasure and injustice. The sage James Baldwin wrote in his 1963 address to American teachers, American history is longer, larger, more various, more beautiful, and more terrible than anything anyone has ever said about it. Amen. It's Sunday, yeah. In her masterpiece, Beloved, Toni Morrison ends with story, the unimaginable kind. She writes, it was not a story to pass on. This is not a story to pass on. But yes, we should try, like she did, and thus we do. What historians like you do is help, as the poet Adrienne Rich wrote, to reconstitute the world. She penned, my heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age perversely with no extraordinary power reconstitute the world. A passion to make and make again where such unmaking reigns. The richness of our pasts is testament to the struggles of those who worked and fought to create a better future that presses the nation to live up to its stated and high ideals. When the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History was opened by my friend and secretary now, Lonnie G. Bunch III, in 2016, President Obama followed President George W. Bush in offering comments. As President Bush just said, a great nation doesn't shy from the truth. It strengthens us. It emboldens us. It should fortify us, Mr. Obama said. It is an act of patriotism to understand where we've been. Let us accept, then, the challenge to embrace our own version of patriotism, that of knowing history. Congressman and civil rights lion John Lewis, in Across That Bridge, A Vision for Change and the Future of America, declared this: it is only through examining history that you become aware of where you stand within the continuum of change. As forces in the nation today would want to erase history, take away rights set forth in the Declaration, enshrined in the Constitution, and expanded through bloodshed and advocacy of so many, our work as historians is ever more essential. Everyone, regardless of rank, has a history worth knowing and understanding. Every place, big and small, has histories worth identifying and sharing. Thus, seek opportunities to serve your communities, to be in service through and with your skills, and your sensitivities as historians. Join us all in participating in the defense of history, as it and we who know it and we who teach it are yet again under attack for speaking complicated truths. Truths that historians claimed generations ago, such as the horrific type of chattel slavery that became the lasting legacy of the nation's founding. The great American paradox, that this democracy was founded on the backs of African as well as Indian slavery. It was basically a rough synopsis of Edmund Morgan's American Slavery, American Freedom, published in 1975. So whether history is your major, your minor, let it be your guide. And thus, by the power of whatever might be vested in me, you are hereby all historians in my heart and mind of the highest order. My deep, woo! Kudos to the award winners among you and those who've just finished your degree. Those awards named for two amazing ancestors, historians, which I'm so looking forward to seeing you come and get them. And graduates, I leave you with all my warmest and abiding congratulations. Please let me know if there's anything I or anyone at your National Museum of American History can do for you. And thank you for the cherished opportunity to be with you today.